What the Actual Fork podcast is co-hosted by two intuitive eating registered dietitians, yours truly, Sammy Previtt, owner of Fine Food Freedom, and Jenna Warner, owner of Happy Strong Healthy.
We can't stand diet culture bullshit and love keeping it real. Our mission is for all humans to believe that they are made for so much more than chasing a smaller body. We are also here to share with you that food can be fun and pleasurable again.
Although we are medical professionals, we are human beings too. We are not afraid to share our deepest, darkest secrets and how many years of our lives were taken by diet culture.
We started this podcast so no human has to feel alone in their journey towards food freedom. So get comfy and join us for a casual convo where you can expect to laugh, cry, learn, and grow.
We are so grateful that you're here. So if you enjoyed this podcast and want to connect further, we invite you to follow along on Instagram at WhatTheActualForkPod and subscribe, rate, and review our podcast so we can continue to share this message with more and more people. Now, let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode of What the Actual Fork podcast. I gave my sickness through the computer to Jenna. Jenna, I'm so sorry.
I literally started this non-recorded part of the episode saying, if it was possible to catch something through a screen, Sam, I blame you, because it's just like conveniently a couple days later. But in all seriousness, apologies for the voice, but I'm here and I'm so excited to talk to you today.
It honestly sounds sexy. Like you have that.
That's what I said to you.
It's like that sexy rasp that it's like the Emma Stone rasp that like we all want, but like we just don't naturally have. So like,
but like it feels like my chest is burning and I'm like bubbling up every time I talk.
I hear you. Hey, I'm on day 3 of amoxicillin. Let's fucking go.
Girl.
Like we're just medicated AF over here. Okay, well, let's jump right in. So let's start today's episode off on a positive note with a very new tradition that we're going to do by opening our episodes with some of our favorite customer reviews, as Apple calls them. So Jenna, I'm going to let you pick your favorite one that you want to call out first.
I'm actually going to like close my eyes and just scroll and pick one.
Okay.
Okay. So I landed on a 5-star review. How nice for me. That says, refreshing and real. I am so glad I stumbled across this amazing podcast on Instagram. The damage diet culture has done to our self-esteem as a society is immense, and these ladies are keeping it real. Thank you for your amazing content. Refreshing and real from Losing When. Thank you so much.
I love that. And I was going to do the same where I was going to scroll, but I'm just going to go with the first one because it's a 5-star and it's very, very sweet. So this is from Meg-Grounded Nourishment. Where the Fork has this podcast been my whole life, loving their application of the word fork. I love listening to Sammy and Jenna each week as they reiterate the importance of eating to nourish your body, not restrict it. From a fellow RD, this is a recent fave on my podcast rotation. I love that we have fellow dietitians and RDs to be listening to this podcast.
It's so nice. And honestly, guys, you have no idea how much these reviews mean to us. And they just make us smile. We read all of them, and this will be a new tradition so we can share them all with you. And it would mean so much to us if you could pause this episode or do it afterwards, but shoot us a review wherever you listen to your podcast. It would mean the world.
Yes. And don't be afraid to also leave us feedback on there of like what you want to hear more of, because we do really read these. And what also like, I just want to second everything you said, Jenna. And I think another really important piece of the reviews is like the more reviews we have, the more the podcast platforms like push your podcast. And we genuinely want this podcast to be in the ears of as many people as possible to crush diet culture. So it really does mean the world to us. We are so grateful for every single one of you who listen to this podcast and make our dreams come true. And just help others hear the podcast too.
I don't think we've ever shared this, or me personally, but you know, you guys, we get a lot of emails from you guys saying like how much the podcast has helped you. I'm going to get a little emotional, but I need our listeners to know and understand like how much this podcast has also helped us. And like, I can only speak for myself, but my postpartum, like early days, it was the podcast that got me back into working, got me back into like a routine. It got me excited about work again and like going back to the passion that I've always had for this work, but I kind of lost it in those early, like dark postpartum days and like didn't really know how to resume any type of a work schedule when like I wasn't sleeping. And, you know, life is just crazy when you have a new baby, right? But this podcast was the thing that like I knew I wanted to show back up for more than anything and like really helped me in some of like my dark times. In addition, this podcast is what like jumped me over the fence to change our entire practice and like move to a space of truly helping people versus the previous more weight focused approach that I was working under. When I started my practice many, many, many years ago. So I'm super grateful for all of these listeners for so many reasons, but I just wanted to share those too.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And it's like, it's so true because like, obviously you and I, like being such good friends, we're like, we just want to like freaking see each other and chat. And we're like, how do we, and like, obviously we talk offline, but like, how do we, it's like a dream to be able to just chat with you and have these conversations. And I totally agree. Like definitely in like 2020, 2021, going through COVID / like infertility, like super dark days. Like this was one of the only things that like got me out of bed. So I feel the exact same way as you and just so grateful to be here with you and all of our listeners.
Okay, so sappiness over. Let's get into the good stuff. You shared some fucking break the internet shit this weekend, and I literally was like dying the whole time. Like when okay, so Sammy broke the internet this weekend talking about an experience in the doctor's office. If you are not one of the millions of people that have already seen it, go on her TikTok and make sure that you do watch it. But, you know, two things. One, and I'm just assuming this is your what the actual fork moment. Sorry. But one, when the story started out with him touching your back, like the amount of red flags, like I like chills, like shot up and down my spine. So I want you to talk more about that. But two, I had the exact same experience with was he a doctor? With a doctor. Not as recently, but my response back was pretty much the same as yours. Like, do you know what the rates of eating disorders are in the United States today? And like, until you do, let's stop having this conversation. And the doctor literally like stopped talking to me after that, which it sounds like yours did not. So I would love for you to expand on this one.
Well, it's funny. Okay, like first of all, you just like never know what's going to land on TikTok. And I don't know why. Like Sienna was down for a nap and I was bored and I was like very pissed off from the day before or whatever and about this experience. And I was like, fuck it. Like I feel like I should just like make a video about it. And so I sat down to make a video about it. And then 3 minutes later in the first video, I was like, literally didn't get to any of the points that the video was about. But I felt so deeply that like, and I'm so happy I did share that though, because I almost left out the part of him like touching me without consent when that like
that is wild.
It set the tone for the room, for the story, for the experience I had. And I like knew right away what was going to happen. And it was just, it was terrible. But yeah, I mean, I think everyone has had this experience with a medical professional. I think every listener has gone into a medical professional's office, no matter if they're a doctor, a dietitian, a PT, an OT, a nurse practitioner. I don't care who it is. Like we as human beings have gone into a medical setting and been riddled with guilt and shame. And I made it really clear in these videos too, to also state how I have thin privilege. Like I'm very aware of that. And the fact that this shithead made me feel so terrible and I reside in a straight size body, like all I could think about the whole time was like, how does this man treat his patients that reside in a larger body? And then again, like leaving my appointment, I'm like, I don't trust anything. Like I came home from the doctor and Luke's like, how was your appointment? I was like, horrible. And I just like start like, and I was like, and I don't even trust him because like, if he's saying all of this, like, what does he know about a sore throat? And like, and I just like, I don't know. I just felt so defeated. And it just was like another reminder, like when you go into medical care of like how fucked up. Like,
Well, give our listeners
psychiatrists
who are not on TikTok just like a brief,
of what happened.
not like your 9-minute story, but like
A brief. Okay, here's the story.
What happened?
I'll spare like all the details. Quick story. Went to urgent care after double pink eye, norovirus, now sore throat, cough, congestion.
That she gave to Jenna through the microphone.
That I gave to Jenna through a microphone. So I go into this urgent care. I had an appointment at 4:30, had to wait an hour. They were very backed up. Guy walks in the room. My back is to the door. He starts rubbing my back. As soon as he walks in, it's like, hi, how are you? Like, what's going on? And I like turn around and I'm like, hi. But fast forward, before I even explained to him what was going on, he's like, well, I've had about 20 other patients that have had sore throats today, and I really just think it's allergies. So again, that's just like another huge red flag to me, is like, you never should be talking about your other patients with your current patient, but their experiences have nothing to do with me. So I don't know why you're bringing that up just because I have a sore throat. So then he like fucking takes the little wooden thing and makes me go, ah. And then he's like, oh my gosh.
You're sick.
He's like, your throat is so red and like, blah, blah, blah. And then and I was like, yeah, I mean, I was just talking for an hour on this training. And he's like, what do you do for a living? Boom. I accidentally said registered dietitian. And that just set off this fat phobic bomb where he was like, I mean, we have such a problem with obesity in America. With COVID, I saw all of these fat patients and it's such a problem and everybody's so lazy and just kept going. And honestly, I let him because I was so stunned and angry. Like my fight or flight definitely kicked in, fight, flight, or freeze. And I'm a freezer when I'm like completely caught off guard. So I just was like riddled with anger and sitting there like frozen. But I was like, whatever, just let him talk. And then I tried to shoot back with something, but again, it goes back to our advice that we heard from Evelyn Tribole, like don't engage if they're not reachable or teachable. And he made it very clear that he was not reachable or teachable. So I tried to shoot back with some things about like, I support clients in all size bodies. I don't feel that way. But like, he basically laughed at me and it was such a shit storm. Like, I don't even know what else to say at this point.
Well, I think, first of all, thank you for sharing that. Again, I'm sure it's like traumatic to talk about, so I'm sorry. But I think what you did at the end, what you shared, is that you reported him and you reported the experience, yes. Which like some people wouldn't do. And not saying that you guys have to do this if you have this experience, because there could be a lot of shame or just trauma connected to that experience. But like, how amazing that this could potentially get back to him. And like, maybe to some extent, like, there could be some repercussions. I mean, a man should never touch a woman without consent to begin with. But in the medical field, like that's a huge no-no. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
Not to mention all of the fat phobia he was just spewing. He basically, somehow we got started on hunger and he was laughing at me when I was saying we have like hungry children in the world. And it was just the epitome of like Florida man strikes again. And I was just like, get me the fuck out of this office. Because it was just like, oh, like we all know what we think of when we think of Florida man. And it was him. And it was just so clear what his beliefs are on so many different levels. And I was just like, I literally had to look him dead in the eye and be like, so back to my throat, what are we going to do about this? And then I just like stormed out once he gave me a script, and then I reported him and like wrote down everything he said. But it's just like, It's and I loved this doctor's office. There was this amazing female doctor that I've seen like every time I go there, and that's the only reason I went there, because I was like, oh, I really hope she's there. And then this happened.
Of course.
Like, fuck. So yeah, my what the actual fork moment is definitely no. I mean, I'm glad you brought it up, because it's and I want to just stress that as two very privileged hosts of the podcast, we recognize that this experience would be so much more traumatic, and just people would be so much more oppressed in the larger body, and it's just not fair, and it's just ridiculous that it's 2023 and this is the medical care that is out there.
Yeah.
What's your what the actual fork moment, Jen? I would love to hear it.
Mine's like not as good as yours, but I feel like it could be, sorry, it could land with some people. But I was scrolling as I was walking my dog this morning, and I saw this picture of Dr. Mark Hyman on like the New York Post Instagram. And it's like, he's like super ripped and he's like working out. And for those that don't know, like Mark Hyman is an Instagram doctor, if you want to call him that. I don't know. But I've gotten into like wars on social with him before, because he posts incredibly privileged, incredibly non-scientific opinions about health. Like, he's just incredibly elitist when it comes to his views of health. And also, by the way, has his own line of supplements. But in the New York Post article, it said like, he's like 63, but his biological age is 43. And like, watch his
what the fuck?
Come read on our article. It's like, no hate to the New York Post, but it's like, come to our article to see his morning routine, which he credits his health to. So, okay, backtrack. The end of January, super privileged of me to be able to say, and super grateful for the experience. But my mom and I went to Canyon Ranch, which is like this incredible wellness retreat in Lenox, Massachusetts. And I'm walking the hallways. Like, we just got there. I had an appointment. My mom did not. So like parted ways, and I'm like walking towards like the medical offices to meet with the person that I was going to talk to at the time. And this like man walks past me, and I'm like, no fucking way. It's Mark Hyman, who's walking past me after he's like leaving like the racquetball courts, and he's like in his sweatpants and like whatever else. And I'm in this waiting room and like feverishly like Googling like, why the fuck is he here? Essentially found out that he has like a residency in this facility, and he essentially like lives there, and he has access to all of these incredible services at his fingertips at all times. But sure, let's credit his morning routine to his quote unquote 20-year age gap of his biological age. Like, the things that are put on the internet that make people believe that anyone can have whatever they want when it comes to health is just like so fucking angering to me. And I just had to share that.
I remember you texting us when you saw him, but then I didn't know that.
And you also don't know you didn't know who he was, which like cracked me up.
I don't, like, I really didn't. I was like, I mean, I like recognize the name. I was like, is that a guy from Shark Tank? And I was like, no, wrong.
My like hatred for him began when he posted something, and I was not in clinical at the time, but he posted something like a long time ago about how it's the hospital foods that make people sick. And like, he posted a picture of like a tray at a hospital, and it was like eggs and Cheerios, and it had syrup and like a pancake and like a fruit cup, and I would look, and milk, and I was like looking at it. It's saved in my highlights somewhere. And I'm like, I don't understand. And like, he wrote something about like how if like nature didn't make it, like we shouldn't eat it. And I just remember commenting back, like, did nature make your supplement line? Because like, I'm pretty sure it didn't. And like, how, if you have all this money and all of this quote unquote power, like, why don't you donate to hospitals then to like help them get some more sources and some more money to like feed their patients different food then? But like, also I look at this tray and I see energy, and I see protein, and I see access, and I see food and fuel for the people that are in the hospitals healing. Like, why are we shitting on things that are actually helping people? And like, that's just like the mecca of his entire account. It's just that kind of bullshit. And like, to see him in real life, my like heart was pounding. I was like, do I say something to him? Like, do I go find him?
You're
and
like, do you remember that comment from 5 years ago? That was me. And like,
that was me. And if you want to talk about it, like, I'm so much better at talking about it now. So like,
oh
yeah,
my
it's
God.
just, Yeah. Anyways, you can't believe everything you see on the internet. You shouldn't believe everything you see on the internet, and people lie. That's what the actual fork moment.
Very true. And what a great segue into today's episode
Oh yeah. I
where
didn't
we
even do
want
that
to,
on purpose.
yes, because we want to talk about ways to keep you safe when you are living in this diet culture entrenched world. And one of the ways I'm going to start with is something I sent to you, Jenna,
Yes.
on TikTok that I didn't even know you could do this until I saw a video on it. So if you open up your TikTok page, and I'm sure you can do this on Instagram. So I just feel like my Instagram is like better curated because
Mm.
of how long I've been on the platform. But
I'll try
you,
now.
yeah, open up your account and then go in the upper right-hand corner where there's like the little menu, the three little lines, and then click settings and privacy. Then under content and display, you're going to click content preferences. And then you're going to click filter video keywords. So, and then you're going to add as many keywords as you want. So you'll click add keyword and any word. So if you wanted to say like Noom or, Weight Watchers or diet or weight loss or, calories or whatever it is, Mark Hyman or, whatever you want to not see, you're going to write that word and you're going to click filter from for you and following. Or you could just do for you page. Cause like, for example, like it would be interesting to see because like you and I do videos, let's say on like Noom, where somebody might want to see that, but they don't want to see it from like a stranger. They want to see it from a safe source. So this is a great way that you can, anything that's triggering to you, whether it's something towards an eating disorder, chronic dieting, or just anything in general, you can add many keywords here to just try to keep your FYP as safe as possible. And I think it's important because especially with TikTok, you just get so much random content. And I feel like they're always trialing like, new content to users. So as soon as you see something that you're like, oh my God, no, like scroll past it and then go immediately set one of these filters, because I feel like that's a good way to remind yourself, like, I do not want to see this type of content.
I was just looking on
yeah.
Instagram for like the same, but I think from what I remember, if you go into like your search section and you see something that you don't enjoy, what you can do is hold it down and then put not interested.
Yes.
So like
and you can do that on TikTok too, where you like, I just like would report, which I guess is maybe still helpful, but I feel like hopefully so you just don't, because I guess, yeah, Instagram and TikTok just function so differently with how you see content.
Yeah, this one just let me basically hide it. So it's like it goes away and then hopefully the algorithm understands that that's not what you want to see on your page.
Yes. So I think, just being that you're listening to a podcast right now, if you can hear us speaking between podcasting and just social media in general, like really these steps that we just talked about can be really important because they can remove the triggers before they happen. Because I mean, let's face it, we all live in diet culture. Diet culture is all around us. So we're going to be triggered. But if just setting these little keyword filters can help trigger you, it could be really helpful.
Absolutely. And I think that leads into our next tip. And I actually had this conversation with a client earlier today, and she was experiencing something like specifically in like a postpartum brain. And like made a comment like following something like makes her feel perhaps inadequate or like she's not doing enough or her routine isn't enough. And we kind of paused and had this conversation that there comes a point where you have to start asking yourself, like, is this helping me or is this hurting me? And there is a huge difference between the two, right? And of course, there's nuance with everything. If, like, for us, if your business depends on you being on social media, perhaps it is setting parameters on times, perhaps it's setting parameters on, I don't know, the apps that you use or your scrolling time versus like your work time, whatever that looks like for you. But she was able to answer me and say, no one's ever asked me that before. And I don't think seeing someone else's postpartum routine is helping me at all. So like, no, this isn't helping me. And the same goes for someone's what I eat in a day, or someone's exercise routine, or somebody's
Morning
their
routine.
recipes, right? Those stupid morning routines where people are making their beds and putting all the fucking pillows back on. Like, please, like, please, like, I swear the nighttime routines can even be really triggering. And the comparison that goes on in your brain after something like that occurs, like, is it helping or is it hurting? And starting to be really honest with yourself. If it's not inspiring you or making you feel better, or just like encouraging you to, I don't know, do something that you wouldn't do that's going to make you feel good, or making you happy, or making you smile, I don't know. Like, if it's not doing those things for you, like, what is it actually doing? And starting to get very honest with that. And I'm speaking to myself too, because oftentimes it's not helping me either.
I get it. I get it. And I would agree so much with those questions. And it's something I definitely look at all the time, where like, I'm like, oh, nope, this is not helping me. I'm going to shut this one out and we're done here. And it's just because then it can just start those negative thought spirals. And so I think that's an awesome one. And I think, on the same note of down the social media kind of trail we started, is just diversifying your feed and filling your feed with things that you do enjoy, that do make you happy, that you 100% know make you feel better, or create a little seed of curiosity. A big one in the food and body image space is making sure that your feed doesn't look like one aesthetic. It shouldn't look like this unrealistic beauty standard that our world throws on us. So ensuring that you're following all different shapes, sizes, colors, races, sexualities, genders. There are so many amazing creators out there, and it is so beneficial to see the world through so many lenses. And I'll never forget when I got that advice years ago and not realizing that my feed was all one kind of person, and how like beautifully diverse my feed is now, and how much I love it. Like, it makes a world of a difference.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I think to close on this piece, something that you and I had talked about before we hit record today too is, we talk about this all the time when it comes to food, when it comes to body, when it comes to movement, when it comes to social media and boundaries and pretty much everything in life. But have you, as a listener, as an individual, as a person, ever been honest with yourself or defined what feels good to you? And I think like that's something that, like, if you can spend some time with the journal, with your thoughts and meditation, like whatever is your thing, in silence, on a dog walk, whatever, to define like what that means. Because I was starting to think back to, speaking of social media, there's some horrible trends about fitness like right now. And I don't know if you've seen like the one where like it's like something in the beginning and then it cuts to like the guy in front of the ocean, like putting his hand up. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them are like about fitness, right? And I started thinking back to me of like, why did you in the past, like in your disordered days, like start that journey? And like the answer for me always was like to feel good. But my definition of feeling good then versus now in a recovered state or recovery state and in the phase of life that I'm in is so different. And like now I can differentiate the differences between the two, right? And like where my head was at then versus now, etc., comes with support and time and lots of healing. But I think it's an important phase and step in like an awareness process to understand like what makes you feel good. So if we go back to social media, like what content actually makes you feel good? And can you pinpoint the good feeling that you feel after seeing such content? And if you can't, like getting really curious and starting to unpack like some of that, like, so what's the intention of me being on here? Right? Mm-hmm. I think that that's like really, really hard work. And it's like really deep work that will take some time. But if you can start like unpacking some of that and like defining that feeling, it will really, really help you figure out what you need to continue to maintain that.
Yes, that was so beautifully said. And I think going down this exact same route, taking it a step further, if you need to take a break,
Mm.
taking a break, right? It's like, it's wild how you can ebb and flow with social and get lost in it and get distracted in it, and how you could delete that app off of your phone and the world would still be spinning and the world would still go on and your life would still go on. And think about how different it could be if you weren't on the app, right?
Many
And
times you would get back.
well, yeah, time is definitely one of them. So not being afraid to take a break and go through seasons of life. Um, I mean, I will say, like, I love connecting with people on TikTok,
Mm.
but those few first months that Sienna was born, I I could probably count on two hands how many TikToks I made, and it was amazing. Like, I was not on the app, and like I genuinely, obviously I was also like soaking in like a newborn and like had a lot on my plate, but like it was just wild to see like the world went on without me and like I was okay and everyone was okay.
Isn't it
So,
also amazing when you hear people that are like, "Oh, I'm not on TikTok." I'm like, I'm so jealous. Like if
yeah.
that's my response, like that's a huge red flag, right? Like that's like an answer that I should like unpack myself.
That's like when I
Um,
was pregnant and I was like, "Oh, I wish I was always pregnant so I didn't have to drink." And I was like, "Oh,
ooh.
okay, let's take that one to therapy." But yeah, like we say these things and it's like, "Oh, maybe
I
I
know.
should sit with that and get curious about that." Mm,
Oh, well, I think this was super helpful. I think even for us to just talk out loud, and I hope you
yeah.
guys get something from it as well. Um, if you guys find these journal prompts and like little tips and tricks helpful, and there's something that you want to specifically learn about, please feel free to write in or leave it as a review, like we said before. I know, Sam, we talked about adding in more journal prompts. Is there anything that you wanted to add on this one?
Well, I love what you said about like, can you specifically word it how you said with feels good? I want to make sure I don't repeat it
Yeah,
specifically.
just being honest with what does feeling good mean to you? Like,
Yes.
what does that feel like? What does that look like if you close your eyes? Like, who are you when you feel good? I think that that's like a really, and being like honest and like deep with it and trying very, very hard. There's my dog. I'm sorry, to bring it out of like surface level and like go inward. I think that that's like really, really powerful.
Yes. I, to follow up with that, I think that is perfect. And then I think just cutting a piece of paper in half, on one side, write the word health, on the other side, write the word health. But one side is dedicated to the definition of health in diet culture,
Mm.
and the other side is dedicated to the ideal version of health that you want to be true for you. Because what that definition is, or it might not feel true right now, but if you want to view health as feeling physically, mentally, emotionally pleasant, right? And all of these things, I think recognizing that, because I think health is such a nuanced term, healthy is such a nuanced term, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to pursue health, but it's getting really honest about what is health, because is
Mm.
health tied to weight, or is health, like you said, this like
Feeling.
what does feeling good mean? And I feel like that kind of all ties in together.
Yeah, I love that. I always have clients define healthy, strong, and happy because those obviously are meaningful words to me. But I think in different phases of your journey, like they mean different things. Like
Yep.
strength means something so different to me today than it meant 7 years ago, right? Like when I was deep in a very different phase of my life. And the same with happiness, which was tied to something very different than it actually means today. So I think that could be like a really great practice for everyone to do. And we would love to hear your outcomes. Feel free to share them on social media. You can tag us. We love
Yeah.
seeing those. Um, and thanks for being here, guys.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of What the Actual Fork Pod. We know there are a lot of pods out there, and we are so grateful that you are here listening with us.
So if you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe, like, share with all of your friends and faves, and don't forget to rate and review and let us know what you want to hear more of. The more we hear from you, the more that we can make these episodes exactly what you want. We would also love to connect with you on Instagram at WhatTheActualForkPod.
We promise to continue to bring you the hottest topics, greatest guests, and the most fun you can possibly have fighting diet culture bullshit. We love you, we appreciate you, and we will see you next week for more fun.